It's chilly, it's quite cold. It's late evening right now. I feel as if I was Emmett Brown from Back to the Future, reporting live to the camera what's happening, right? And in this setting, I'd like to recall a question that I asked my mom when I was a rather young, let's say 10-year-old boy. And I was with her in a different setting, in a busy setting, in a shop establishment of shops, let's say. It wasn't a galleria, it was more like a market of small businesses all placed in one building, so a pre-galleria period, I would say, in Poland. And I asked my mom, who was busy shopping, doing all the things, ensuring that she gets all the things that we need. I thought that I need to ask her a very pending question for me. And that question was, what it is like to be an adult. What does it mean, rather, to be an adult? Probably my question was, what does it mean to be an adult? And my mom, busy with doing the shopping and having her thoughts probably running around different matters, on the spur of the moment she gave me the following answer. You reach 18 years old of age, you receive your ID, and you are an adult. That was a very concise answer. And I received that answer. I thought, all right, I take it as it is. Unfortunately, I couldn't ask any follow-up questions. So I was left with that explanation. I couldn't anyway complain about it because it gave me, it was an answer, right? But at the same time, I wasn't really satisfied. So I thought, all right, if it is what it is, I will continue living and I'll see what happens, right? However, that question remained with me, and when I was getting older, I thought, what would it be like when I go to high school? Will I go to high school at all? And people then go to colleges, to universities. What it is like? Maybe in the era of the internet, people may, have a better idea of what it is like to be in these places in future, in high school, etc. So there is much more information available than it was back then. However, that, let's say, unfulfilled answer, unrequited, let's say, quench for the meaning, what it is like to be an adult, what does it mean to be an adult, it remained with me. And now, as an adult person, I kind of thought about it. What kind of answer would I give myself if I received that answer from my perspective? And I've once stumbled upon Jordan Peterson's videos, and he spoke about complexity. And he said that being an adult means being exposed to complexities. And in the context of his speech or his lecture, he meant that these complexities can be dangerous. And he explained that the root of mental illness is not, let's say, one thing going wrong in somebody's life, but many things going wrong simultaneously, consecutively, within the same time frame or similar time frame. And I thought, that's a very good explanation of putting things in perspective as well. And I thought that actually being an adult means being exposed to many complexities, just like he said. However, even in his answer, there is not much granular content. So it is put in a perspective. However, this perspective is still kind of blur. And it remained a nagging question for me to put all these complexities in better perspective and give them better focus in some way. And here is my answer. I think that this answer is not comprehensive. It's not fully comprehensive, though it's comprehensible enough, I would say. And I would be satisfied with it. So, in philosophy, there was one philosopher called Hobbes, and he had a theory of a Leviathan. And he used this term to describe a monster. And I will use the same term. I hope I don't botch the pronunciation. Please, bear with me. I'm Polish, so English is my second language. So mispronouncing things is usually something that I may stumble upon, and I may feel it in my toes while doing that. So let's say that I pronounce it correctly, Leviathan, and I will use the term Leviathan as a monster, not in the meaning of Hobbes. If you are interested in Hobbes, please have a look at Hobbes' thoughts on that matter. However, this is also a rather complex thing to describe, and his meaning is not useful for me. So I use his term, however, in my own way. So Leviathan, in my theory, symbolizes the state. I mean the country's authorities, and authorities in general, as well as all the legal system and all the institutions that go with it. So this is the first part of the question, of the answer to my question. What does it mean to be an adult? It means to become an object of Leviathan or subject of Leviathan, depending on the perspective. So it means that once you get your ID, when you become an adult, whether it is 18 years old or 21 years old, the Leviathan opens its eyes. And it's got many of them. Each eye is an institution that looks at you, or you become visible for that institution when you become an adult. And whether you want it or not, you will have to face those institutions. Also, the interplay of these institutions may affect you. And the more these institutions have been created, the more you may encounter them. So many countries have different ways of having different institutions, of course. So they create some countries create many institutions, some other countries create less of them. So in some countries the Leviathan, let's say, can be bigger or may have more eyes, and in the other countries that Leviathan may be smaller. And many theorists say that the smaller the Leviathan is, the better it actually is for an individual person. However, the Leviathan exists, and it has to exist, unfortunately. And when somebody becomes an adult, that person is not only seen by the Leviathan, but may also find themselves in different parts of places of the Leviathan. Let's say if you break the law, even unknowingly, you are still responsible for that. So there is no escape from Leviathan, and Leviathan may grab you in its claws, for instance. So that's an unfavorable position to be in, when it comes to seeing things in an imaginative way. However, there are certain parts of the Leviathan which are favorable to be in. For instance, when you are a politician, you actually find yourself in the head or in the brain of the Leviathan. When you are, let's say, a president, and president is granted a lot of power depending on a country, then when you are a president, you are in the head, you are maybe the entire head of the Leviathan. So it depends. However, an ordinary, regular person is not actually in the head of the Leviathan. It may live far. An individual in an imaginary land may live far away from the Leviathan. However, the Leviathan knows where you are and can find you, or it can grab you, like I described before. So the first monster that you face as an adult person is actually the Leviathan, as I described. And I use the term monster because I cannot really find a better term. Maybe you can call it a creature. However, it's a huge creature, and the Leviathan was conceived by Hobbes as a monster, so I let it be this way. Another monster that an adult person faces or becomes entangled with is a monster that I conceived on my own, and that monster is called berry bull. So there are two words that I used to coin the term. The first is bear, and the second one is bull. So we've got a berry bull. Now, of course, I think you should know that already. You probably think that, oh, okay, I get you. These terms derive from the economy, from the market. Like when the market is growing, we've got one type of market, and when there is a decline of market, there is an unfavorable situation. We've got another situation, and economists use these terms, bear market and bull market, to describe these situations, favorable or unfavorable, right? So you've got, combining these two, you got a berry bull, like one monster when the economy is all right. So it's like a two-face monster with two faces, with a face of a bear and face of a bull. And you never know which face you're gonna get in your life. So once you are an adult, you are exposed to one face of another, and you better get the better face of it than the worse. Unfortunately, the situation is not that easy to ask the monster to give you its better part, its better face, because I remember watching a lecture by an economist who attempted to explain what economy is, and his explanation was incredibly difficult, incredibly convoluted. And at some point, he himself admitted that even though he has been studying economy throughout his whole life, he doesn't fully understand it. And he is proud of making a few good predictions in his lifetime about the economy. So this is how complex the situation is. And it came to my mind that actually modern economy may resemble a genie or a monster that is left out, that is released from a Pandora box. And a Pandora box is of course a box from the mythology of ancient Greeks, and it symbolizes a box that opens with lots of misfortune. And why do I think that berry bull is actually quite an unfortunate monster for a person to face. I mean it in a way that people creating economy have completely lost control of it. They cannot really predict it. Some people play on stock market and they win, but there are actually quite a few cases of people who made a lot of money there. Majority lose money there, unfortunately. So it's a economy as a variable has a life on its own. No one controls it. In the past, there was more or less one-to-one relationship between goods, services, and gold stored. So all the gold stored symbolized exactly all the goods and services in economy. Then money was printed, and then that one-to-one relationship was still preserved. However, right now, we don't even use money. Everything is digital. Everything is completely symbolic. Lots of things can be manipulated, especially by the Leviathan, by some decisions of the government. They may influence economy significantly, or a government may start a war with another country, like it happens in Israel, or when it comes to Israel and Hamas conflict. Such conflicts influence economy, whether the country likes it or not. And these changes, economic changes, have multiple ripple effects. The same is true for the conflict in Ukraine and Russia. These matters have ripple effects, and no one really controls them. So it's a huge, like a genie left outside of its box, and it has a life on its own while being created by humans. It's really abstract, perplexing, puzzling. And now imagine that you are an adult, young adult, and you face this situation. So we've got Leviathan, we've got variable, and the last one, the last monster, like I believe an adult faces, and this is what it means to be an adult as well, is the kaiju monster. And I mean that I took that monster from Japanese mythology, and in, let's say, mythology or movies, manga movies perhaps. I'm not sure of its exact origin in Japanese culture. However, kaiju derives from Japanese culture generally. So the kaiju monsters come in different shapes and forms, and they usually attack cities, attack human beings. So to me, it symbolizes all kinds of entropy. And what do I mean by entropy? I mean all the unfavorable circumstances. For instance, when you've got bacteria on your tooth that creates cavity, that's entropy. So that is a form of kaiju coming at you, and you've got to face it. When you are a child or a young person, you are actually protected, at least in theory. If you've got a happy, so-called happy childhood, you are protected from these monsters by your parents. So you live under their umbrella, so to speak. However, when you become an adult, you are exposed to all kinds of unfavorable situations. You've got to face them because you step out of your comfort zone of childhood, of being protected, out in the world, while, for instance, interacting with variable. Even variable can create hazardous situations that will attract different kaiju, for instance, right? So there is an interplay between all these monsters that you face as an adult person. And why do I think that they are actually monsters and they should be called monsters? Because I think that right now, in the modern times, there is lots of fear, there is lots of anxiety, and I thought that these fears and these anxieties have their source, and I believe that this source is not described in any way, whereas my theory describes these fears in a very descriptive way. It shows three monsters that create all these difficult feelings. So if many people react in fear to life, then that means that there is something going on. Even if you don't see that, then maybe my theory unveils it pretty well. I believe so. I really like that explanation, and I would accept such an explanation as a young person. So the explanation is like this. When you become an adult, you face three monsters, whether you like it or not, and you've got to interact with them, be wise about it, find your ways with these monsters. I will probably make another video explaining how to interact with these creatures, with these monsters, while trying to preserve the most out of being a young person. I think that an adult loses lots of positive characteristics of a young person in their adult life. However, I think it happens when a person actually faces these monsters. So when you do that, the perspective shifts. So you cannot actually be as playful as you were when you face real life, let's say, monsters. You've got to adapt. You've got to adapt to circumstances. You've got to find strategies, ways of dealing with these things. And one of the things that is usually lost is the young person's playfulness. I think that if you are blindly playful as an adult person, this can be detrimental when it comes to interacting with the monsters that I described. However, I think that not everything is as grim as I described, and there are ways of preserving some characteristics of a young person in future adult life. However, this is a video, this is content complex enough for another video. So far, let me know what you think about my theory of what it means to be an adult, of the monsters that I described. Subscribe, follow, and engage.